The plan was simple, until I met her in the maze. The night air in Milwaukee tasted like frost and regret. Jade Collins adjusted her leather jacket as she stood in the flickering neon light of the Riverside Horror House, the notorious haunted attraction known for scaring grown men into sobs and couples into fights. But tonight, Jade wasn't looking for entertainment. She wasn't looking to laugh or cry or even to feel scared. No, what she wanted was something else entirely, an interruption. A disruption of the emotional monotony that had followed her since Sarah left, her heart cracked like a dropped teacup. It wasn't just the cheating that stung, it was the boredom that followed. The dull ache of routine, of days that passed like fog on the highway. Judging sheep for a living gave her a sharp eye and a tougher mind, but not even prize livestock could make up for the gaping silence Sarah left behind. As Jade handed over $30 to the ticket booth, the goth teenager didn't look up from her phone. That was fine. Jade wasn't there to be noticed. She just wanted to disappear into darkness for a while, to surrender to the artificial chaos inside. Green and purple lights danced across her cheekbones as she entered, her long blonde hair catching the flickering ambience like the ghost of someone younger. The first few rooms were predictable. Jump scares, creaking doors. A guy in a dollar store werewolf mask who clearly hadn't had his coffee. But Jade didn't flinch. She'd seen more panic at livestock auctions when an alpaca got loose in the crowd. Then came the mirror maze. The air was colder here, thicker, and the strobe lights, erratic and disorienting, turned the corridor into a pulsating heart of confusion. Jade's hands skimmed over glass, her palms pressing faint smudges onto countless reflections of herself. It was here, in this illusion of self-multiplication, that she heard it breathing. Not hers, not a recording. Real, uneven, panicked. She spun just as the light froze for a fraction of a second and then blinked out. When it returned, she was face to face with someone else entirely. "Holy shit," Jade yelped, her breath catching. "Jesus Christ," the other woman blurted. They both stumbled backward in a flurry of startled limbs and startled pride. When the light steadied for a moment longer, Jade finally saw her. Brunette, shoulder-length hair, freckles dusting high cheekbones, big green eyes like some enchanted forest, alive and shocked all at once. "You're not supposed to be real," the woman gasped. "Neither are you," Jade shot back, trying to catch her breath. They stared, breathing heavy. Then the absurdity hit like a punchline, two adults freaking out in a children's haunted house, and laughter erupted between them. It wasn't forced. It was cleansing. A laugh that bent them at the waist, breathless and ridiculous. "I'm Bella," the woman finally said, offering her hand. "Jade," she said, shaking it. "Have you been following me?" "Please," Bella scoffed. "I've been stuck in this maze for 20 minutes. You scared the soul out of me." Together, they navigated the rest of the maze, giggling like high schoolers who had snuck out past curfew. When they finally emerged, red-cheeked and squinting into the streetlights, Jade felt something stir. Not attraction, exactly, not yet, but curiosity, intrigue, the kind of thing that made her stomach flutter and her common sense hide behind her ribs. Bella handed her a business card before they parted. "King's Antiques," it read in gold calligraphy, classy. And Jade, Miss No-Nonsense, Miss Get-Over-It, stood outside that very shop the next day, pretending she needed a vintage chair for her non-existent reading room. The storefront looked like something out of a movie. Delicate chandeliers, lace curtains, and a warmth that soaked through the glass like candlelight. The bell chimed. Bella looked up, and Jade's world shifted. The glass teacup was already cracked. The antique bell above the door tinkled like some delicate relic of a slower century, and Jade felt the sound ripple down her spine as she stepped into the warm, lavender-scented stillness of King's Antiques. Compared to the freezing Milwaukee wind clawing at her coat just seconds ago, the inside of Bella's shop was like a whisper from another world. Ornate mirrors lined one wall, tall mahogany bookshelves stood like sentinels filled with leather-bound volumes, and glass cabinets showcased faded pocket watches, hand-painted porcelain, and brass candlesticks that still remembered candlelight. It was a place built from memory. Time breathed here, slowly, gracefully. Bella emerged from behind a carved walnut desk, holding a steaming mug of tea and wearing a dark forest green sweater that brought out her eyes in a way that made Jade forget what language was. Her hair was loosely pinned up today, with a few tendrils rebelliously curling along her jawline. There was something timeless about her, as if she'd stepped out of a Victorian photograph and decided to hang around in the present for amusement. "Well, well," Bella said, a small smile curving her lips as her eyes scanned Jade's figure. Jade Collins, judging sheep one day, vintage shopping the next. What's the occasion? Jade offered a sheepish shrug, walking slowly toward a Rococo-era mirror and pretending to examine the gold leaf detailing. I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd check out the 18th century livestock equipment. Bella chuckled, the sound like fine china clinking. Antique pitchforks are in the back, past the gramophones. They laughed, but Jade felt something real moving under the surface. Their connection was immediate, almost dangerous. It was like walking along a river you used to swim in as a child, unsure if the current would still be gentle or if it might pull you under. After a short but charming tour through the shop, complete with Bella's colorful commentary on which collector once tried to buy an entire shelf of Depression-era teacups just to win a bet, Jade was led into a small back room that Bella called her tea library. There, over perfectly steeped jasmine and the soft clink of silver teaspoons, Jade found herself spilling more than she intended. She told Bella about her family's generational sheep farm just outside the city. About her father who had passed the gavel to her before he passed on entirely. About the judging circuit and the showmanship, and how the farm had kept her grounded even as other parts of her life unraveled. About Sarah, though she left out the name, the ex who had drained her dry and left her doubting everything, especially herself. Bella listened the way few people knew how to anymore, with her whole self. She didn't interrupt, didn't offer platitudes or advice wrapped in platters of pity. She simply nodded, sipped her tea, and let silence make space for honesty. You talk about the farm like it's sacred, Bella finally said, her voice low, reverent. Like it's a part of you. It is, Jade replied. And sometimes I hate that, because I feel like I can never leave without tearing myself in half. Bella's gaze softened. Maybe you're not supposed to leave it. Maybe it's not a chain. Maybe it's a root. Those words sat with Jade long after she left the shop that afternoon, a small lavender sachet in her pocket and Bella's number saved in her phone under B Antique Magic. She drove home with the window cracked, letting the late winter air hit her face as she tried to suppress the feeling she was being pulled into something she couldn't stop. A feeling that scared her more than Sarah ever had. That scared her more than losing the farm or facing a corrupt billionaire, whose face she'd only ever seen in grainy newspaper clippings and boardroom stock photos. Because the plan she'd crafted with surgical precision over 2 long years, was simple: investigate, gather evidence, bring Harold Kingston to his knees. The CEO of Kingston Consolidated, a man who had bulldozed farms, stolen pensions, destroyed livelihoods for sport. The man who'd driven her uncle to suicide and left dozens of families in her county bankrupt after manipulating land rights and bribing local officials. Jade had vowed justice. Revenge, even. She'd built spreadsheets of shell companies, tracked false LLCs, followed offshore breadcrumbs across months of lonely research nights. What she didn't plan for, what she could not plan for, was Bella. And she certainly didn't plan to realize, 3 weeks later, curled in Bella's arms under a hand-stitched quilt in her farmhouse, that Bella's last name was Kingston. It came out casually, too casually. They were in bed on a Sunday afternoon, post-lunch, half asleep, Bella tracing lazy circles over Jade's shoulder with the tip of her finger. The air smelled like chamomile and wood smoke, and Jade had been dozing in that golden, half-conscious space where dreams and reality blur. That was when Bella murmured, "You have no idea how peaceful it is here, so different from how I grew up. My dad made chaos feel like oxygen." Jade blinked, one eye open. "Your dad." Bella sighed. "Harold Kingston, you've probably heard of him. Everyone has. Big business, big money, big ego." Jade froze. The name rang through her skull like a fire alarm. She couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. Her body stayed completely still, but her mind sprinted 100 miles an hour, connecting dots, rewinding moments, remembering fragments, the antique shop, the refined taste, the confidence, the way Bella had flinched just slightly whenever anyone mentioned family. Bella was Kingston's daughter. The same Kingston Jade had vowed to expose. The same Kingston she'd been quietly investigating under the radar. Collecting damning information she planned to release in a strategic leak through her friend Sarah, who still had connections in journalism. Jade rolled onto her back, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding in her throat like a trapped animal. She couldn't move. Bella didn't notice the change, or if she did, she mistook it for sleep and kissed her shoulder before curling into her own pillow. Jade lay there all night, not sleeping. In the days that followed, Jade tried to act normal. They still texted, still had coffee dates, still made out in her kitchen like teenagers on the edge of something permanent. But inside Jade, something cracked, something screamed. Every moment with Bella felt like a betrayal, not because Bella had done anything wrong, but because Jade had built her life on a secret now standing on shaking ground. How could she keep this from Bella? How could she destroy her father without destroying the woman who had made her believe in mornings again? The worst part wasn't the guilt. The worst part was how much she didn't want to stop loving her. Because she was, already, quietly, in stolen glances and shared glances, and in the way Bella would rest her forehead against Jade's shoulder when she was tired, in the way she never made Jade feel small or second best or temporary. She had every reason to walk away, and none she was brave enough to use. The truth I couldn't say out loud. The Cold War inside Jade Collins grew louder with every passing day, but on the outside she wore calm like a perfectly tailored coat. Every glance from Bella, every touch of her fingers, every quiet morning they shared beneath the soft weight of the farmhouse quilt felt like both a gift and a warning. She told herself she could separate it. She told herself she could love Bella and still do what needed to be done to her father. But the lie tangled in her chest like barbed wire, and every time Bella said her name softly like a prayer, the wire pulled tighter. Jade's days were now split between tending to her livestock and trying to keep her hands from shaking as she reviewed files on Harold Kingston's offshore real estate empires. Late at night, she opened her laptop in the dark, only the glow of the screen illuminating her face, her cursor blinking over folders labeled K Consolidated Holdings, Land Scam Benton County, and Shell Corp Tanglewood LLC. She had everything. The kind of paper trail that could send a man like Kingston into PR exile, if not court. Fraud, environmental violations, bribes to local politicians disguised as donations. But now those files felt heavier. They weren't just evidence, they were a noose. And every thread ran straight through the heart of the woman currently curled up in Jade's bed, wearing nothing but one of her oversized flannel shirts, and humming a 1930s jazz tune while flipping through a worn book of Emily Dickinson poems. Bella didn't know, and she couldn't, not yet. It wasn't just that Jade didn't want to hurt her. It was the fear, no, the certainty, that she couldn't look into those eyes and survive the moment they filled with betrayal. Bella had this way of believing in her with full, unapologetic trust, and that trust felt like holy ground. Jade couldn't bring herself to trample it, not until she figured out how to separate the sins of the father from the woman who brought her coffee every morning before she asked how her soul was doing. But fate has a way of speeding up timelines just when you think you've bought yourself a little more space. It started with a phone call. Jade was brushing a ewe in the barn when her phone buzzed on the hay bale beside her. It was Sarah. "You need to come into town," her best friend said, voice taut. Jade frowned. "Is this about the files?" "Not over the phone. Come to my clinic now." Half an hour later, Jade stood in the back room of the animal clinic, the smell of antiseptic and pine soap clinging to the air. Sarah had pulled up a local news article on her desktop. The headline made Jade's blood run cold. Kingston Consolidated acquires historic Bentham Farms. Developers plan modern eco-retreat. "No," Jade whispered. "No, that land was supposed to be protected." "It was," Sarah said. "Until last month, some county officials got new campaign funding. Guess from who?" Jade didn't need to answer. Her stomach twisted violently. Sarah turned to her, her face hard. "We can't wait anymore. If we don't go public with the evidence now, he'll bulldoze it all before summer." Jade gripped the edge of the table, her breath coming fast. "I need a few more days, please, just a week." Sarah narrowed her eyes. "What's going on, Jade?" "I just need time." "You're sleeping with someone, aren't you?" Sarah's voice wasn't cruel. It was disappointed. It was tired. "I knew something was different. You've been off. You've been avoiding the hard stuff." "She's not like him," Jade said quietly. "Who?" Jade hesitated, then his daughter. Sarah looked like she'd been slapped. "You've got to be kidding me." She didn't know. She doesn't even speak to him. He's never supported her. She's been on her own since she was 19. She left everything behind, built that shop from nothing. She's not him, Sarah. "But she's still his daughter," Sarah said, soft now, wounded. "And you're the woman who promised to burn that man's empire down." "I still will." "Will you?" Jade didn't have an answer. Her silence said enough. Sarah leaned back in her chair. You better decide what side of this story you want to be on, Jade, because if you wait too long, there won't be one left. That night, the wind howled around the farmhouse like the ghosts of all the things Jade couldn't say. Bella was already there when she returned, sitting at the kitchen table in her favorite blue sweater, sipping red wine and writing in a leather-bound journal. She looked up when Jade entered, her eyes warm. "You're late," she said. "I'm sorry," Jade replied, shrugging off her coat. "Something came up." Bella stood and walked to her, wrapping her arms around Jade's waist. "I missed you." Jade buried her face in Bella's hair and closed her eyes. This was comfort. This was the only peace she knew anymore. "I have something for you," Bella said suddenly, pulling back. She reached into her purse and produced a folded sheet of paper. "Don't open it yet, promise." "What is it?" "A letter for when things get hard." Jade looked at her. "Everyone has their breaking point," Bella said. "I wrote it during a storm 2 weeks ago. Didn't know if I'd ever give it to you, but something told me you'd need it." Jade took the envelope, her fingers trembling. "You're scaring me." Bella smiled softly. "I hope it does the opposite." They didn't talk much after that. They made love quietly, like the world might collapse if they spoke too loud. And when Bella fell asleep beside her, breathing soft and slow, Jade sat in the dark for hours, holding the letter in her hands, too afraid to read it, too afraid not to. The next day brought the fire. Jade woke early to check the lambing pens. A neighbor had called. One of the barns near the old Bentham property was up in smoke. Not hers, not yet, but close, too close. She raced out in her truck, boots barely laced, only to find emergency crews already there, water hoses blasting into what remained of a family's third-generation barn. The owners, elderly and shaken, stood clutching each other as if grief might take them with it. That was the final crack in Jade's resolve. This wasn't just about documents anymore. It wasn't just about justice. It was about people, real people, families, communities. Bella's father had gone from paperwork to arson in the space of a press release, and there was no time left to hesitate. That evening, Jade texted Sarah 3 words. "Do it tomorrow." Then she went home, walked into the house, and stared at Bella sitting on the porch swing, sipping tea and reading poetry like she always did. And Jade's heart broke. Because tomorrow, the world would know everything. And so would Bella. The fire burns the closest things first. The morning was silent in a way that felt almost staged. Too still, too composed, like the sky was holding its breath, waiting to see who would break first. Jade sat on the farmhouse steps long before the sun had climbed high enough to thaw the frost on the barn roof. Her mug of coffee had gone cold untouched, the steam that once rose from it long disappeared. In her coat pocket, her phone buzzed once, just once. That was all it needed. One message, one confirmation from Sarah. "Published, it's everywhere." The report was out. The evidence Jade had gathered for 2 painstaking years, fake environmental audits, dummy corporations, corruption disguised as philanthropy, signed documents with Kingston's name in black and white, was now public. Dozens of online outlets picked it up within an hour. Twitter lit up. Local channels looped the breaking headline on the hour. Billionaire Harold Kingston implicated in multi-million-dollar land scheme, faces federal investigation. Justice, it should have tasted like satisfaction, like rain on droughted land. But to Jade, it tasted like ash. Bella had not come downstairs yet. Jade didn't know if she had seen it, didn't know if she'd read the article, didn't know if her father had already called her in a rage, or worse, if he hadn't called her at all because he no longer considered her family. That thought was more painful than Jade had expected. Because even if Bella hated her father, even if she hadn't spoken to him in years, there was still a wound there. And this public scandal, this nationwide disgrace, would not just reopen it. It would salt it, break it wider. She stepped back inside the house and moved toward the kitchen like someone walking through fog. The air was still, scented faintly with chamomile and toast. Bella stood by the sink, hands braced on the counter, her back to the room. She was barefoot, wearing the same oversized t-shirt she'd slept in, and her phone sat beside her, face up. Jade caught a glimpse of the screen. One of the news articles. Her heart sank. "Bella," Jade's voice cracked. Bella didn't turn around. "Did you know they called me this morning?" Her voice was quieter than Jade had ever heard it. "CNN, NBC, local radio, reporters I haven't spoken to since I was a teenager. They wanted a comment, a reaction, a quote for the public record." Jade moved closer, but something in Bella's shoulders told her not to reach out. "I didn't want you to find out like this." Bella finally turned. Her eyes were red, swollen, but dry now. She looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. "Then how did you want me to find out, Jade? With a love letter, a bouquet of roses, maybe a gentle whisper after the next time we made love?" Jade flinched but said nothing. Bella laughed, sharp and small. "You knew, this whole time, you knew who I was, you knew what he'd done, and you kept showing up. You kept kissing me like I was safe, like I wasn't part of the very thing you were trying to destroy." "I didn't plan this," Jade said, her voice trembling. "I didn't know you were his daughter until after I'd already fallen for you." Bella's eyes darkened. "Fallen for me? You think that makes it better, that you fell in love with the daughter of the man you hate and somehow that's supposed to absolve you?" "I was trying to protect you." "No," Bella said, stepping back. "You were trying to protect yourself, because deep down you knew the moment I found out everything would change." Jade stood there, hands useless at her sides, the distance between them now a canyon. "Bella, I never wanted to hurt you." "And yet," Bella whispered, tears forming again, "you did." A silence dropped over the room, so heavy it seemed to crush the air out of Jade's lungs. She wanted to say something, anything, but her words had no weight anymore. Everything she could say sounded like defense. And Bella didn't want defense. She wanted truth. And the truth was, Jade had chosen justice, and in doing so, she had lost the only peace she'd found in years. Bella picked up her phone and her keys. She didn't pack a bag, didn't grab the overnight things she'd brought. She walked toward the door, pausing only once. "He was a monster to me too," she said quietly. "But he was still my father, and you let me walk right into your arms knowing I'd be the collateral." "Don't go," Jade whispered, breaking now. "Please." Bella turned her hand on the doorknob. "You should open that letter I gave you, the one I told you to read when things got hard, because this," her voice cracked, "this is as hard as it gets." The door closed behind her like a final note. And Jade was alone. She didn't open the letter that day. She couldn't, not yet. She didn't have the courage. Instead, she poured herself into distraction, mending fences, stacking hay, feeding the lambs. Her hands bled from the rough wood. Her shoulders ached from lifting, carrying, fixing. But no amount of work could fix what had broken between her and Bella. The silence of the house was louder now, her bed colder. The spaces Bella used to fill, her laughter, her perfume, the humming, were now ghosts. And Jade couldn't breathe for how much she missed them. Then came the news. 3 days after the report dropped, Harold Kingston held a press conference. He stood before a podium with all the fake charm of a man who thought public relations could drown out truth. He denied the allegations, of course, blamed former employees, claimed forged signatures, called the investigation a politically motivated stunt. But the documents Jade had uncovered were bulletproof. The city council began impeachment proceedings against 2 of his partners. The Justice Department announced a formal inquiry. But none of it brought peace. None of it brought Bella back. Jade finally opened the letter on the 6th day. She sat on the porch swing, her fingers shaking as she broke the lavender seal. It wasn't long. It was handwritten, in Bella's slanted, poetic script. "Jade, there is a kind of love that burns quietly, the kind you don't even know is growing until you look around and realize your whole life has rearranged itself to accommodate its shape. You are that love for me. I've been afraid to say it out loud because the last time I let myself feel something this real, I was left behind. Again. But something about you, your truth, your hands, your silences, they told me you'd never lie to me. If you ever do, I don't know if I'll survive it. So if the day ever comes when you're not who you say you are, please, please let me find out from your mouth, not the world. S. Love. Bella." Jade's tears soaked the paper before she reached the end. Because she had failed the one thing Bella asked. She didn't just walk into the fire, she lit the match herself. The days that followed blurred together like watercolors left out in the rain, shades of gray, sorrow, and bitter light that soaked every corner of Jade's world. She moved through her routines like someone underwater, feeding the sheep, repairing a fence post that didn't really need fixing, pretending she didn't look out toward the long road leading to her farmhouse every few minutes, hoping a familiar car might appear. But it never did. Bella didn't call, didn't text. The silence was sharp, almost cruel, and yet Jade didn't resent her for it. She understood. If the roles were reversed, she wasn't sure she'd be able to forgive either. The guilt didn't come in waves. It sat inside her, heavy, unmoving, like a stone in her chest. The worst part wasn't the fallout of the exposed, nor even the fire that had razed a neighbor's barn. The worst part was knowing she had betrayed the one person who had given her something real, something unscripted, raw, and human, in a world where so much was fake, manufactured, and tactical. Bella had offered her truth, and Jade had answered with silence. But while Jade buried herself in quiet regret, Bella Kingston was making noise the whole city would hear. It began with a headline that stopped Jade cold in the middle of her kitchen. Bella Kingston breaks silence, publicly denounces father, resigns from Kingston Foundation. Jade nearly dropped her mug. She clicked into the video without breathing. There she was, Bella, standing on the steps of the Kingston Cultural Trust, her antique scarf wrapped around her neck, her expression solemn but fierce. Reporters surged in front of her, microphones thrust like spears, their questions loud and impatient. But Bella didn't flinch. She held her chin high, her green eyes burning with something Jade had never seen before, vengeance, but not the kind that destroyed. It was the kind that purified. "My name is Bella Kingston," she said, her voice clear and calm despite the clamor. "And I'm here today not as the daughter of Harold Kingston, but as a citizen, as a businesswoman, and as someone who has spent years trying to build something good in the shadow of something rotten." The cameras clicked like machine guns. "I was not involved in my father's business practices. In fact, I left his world when I was 19 because I could no longer stomach what I saw behind the curtain. But silence can be complicity, and I refuse to be complicit anymore." Jade's hand went to her mouth. Bella continued, "Effective immediately, I'm resigning from all boards and trusts bearing the Kingston name. I will be selling the family shares I inherited and using the proceeds to start a rural restoration fund, focused on rebuilding and protecting the very communities my father's greed tried to erase. Farms, wildlife, families, lives." The reporters exploded with questions. Someone shouted, "What changed your mind?" Bella hesitated for the first time. "Then, someone I trusted made me see what I'd been too afraid to face. And though that trust was broken, the truth remains." Jade felt the breath rush out of her body. Her knees nearly gave out. She grabbed the edge of the counter to stay upright. Bella hadn't said her name. She hadn't needed to. The next morning, the Rural Justice Fund was trending nationally. Donations poured in. Environmental lawyers signed on. Local officials who had once bowed to Harold Kingston's money were now scrambling to distance themselves from the wreckage. The takedown was no longer just digital. It had roots now, real ones, and Bella was its heart. Jade drove to town without thinking. The sheep would wait, the chores would wait, her fear would have to wait. She needed to see her. King's Antique stood silent on Water Street, the gold-painted letters catching the pale light of the late afternoon. The windows were dark, closed sign turned. Jade pressed her hand to the door, heart thundering, then turned to leave until she saw her. Bella, standing just down the street in front of the old bakery, staring into a display case but clearly not seeing anything at all. Jade approached slowly, her boots crunching against scattered sidewalk salt. "Bella." She turned, and for a moment everything in her face was unreadable. Then came something even worse than anger, emptiness, exhaustion, as if the fire had already taken too much. "I saw what you did," Jade said softly. "The press conference, the fund, it was brave." Bella gave a dry smile. It was overdue. "I'm sorry," Jade said again. "I know I've said it before, but it's all I have right now. I should have told you the moment I knew who you were, but I was scared. Not of what it meant for my plan, but of what it meant for us. I didn't want to lose you." Bella didn't respond immediately. She crossed her arms, looking down the street, as if searching for the right place in the horizon to bury her thoughts. "I loved my father once," she said finally. "Before I understood the cost of that love, before I realized it came with conditions, I tried to carve a life that wasn't defined by his name. I opened a shop, sold old things, gave history a place to be gentle again. And then you walked in with that sheepish grin and a story about haunted houses, and I thought, finally, someone who doesn't care about the legacy I left behind." "I didn't care," Jade whispered. "Not about the name, only you." "But you used me." "No," Jade shook her head. "I never used you. I fell in love with you in spite of everything." Bella looked at her, finally, not through her, at her. "I believe you," she said, "but belief doesn't erase damage. I don't expect forgiveness." "Good," Bella said, "because I don't have it yet." Jade swallowed. "But I also don't have hate," she added after a moment. "Just confusion, pain, and maybe something else that I'm not ready to name." They stood in silence as traffic drifted by. a soft wind brushing past them like an old friend returning to see if there was anything left to save. "Would you walk with me?" Bella asked suddenly. Jade nodded almost too quickly. They didn't speak much as they wandered down the tree-lined streets, past bookstores and flower stalls, past memories that still lingered like scents on the sidewalk. When they reached the park at the edge of downtown, Bella sat on a wooden bench beneath a frost-dusted tree. Jade joined her, careful not to sit too close. "I read your statement again this morning," Jade said. "Every word felt like fire." "It had to be," Bella said. "Sometimes the only way to burn down a legacy is to start with your own name." They sat quietly after that, letting the wind whistle through the empty branches above. Finally, Bella turned. "I don't know what happens next." "Neither do I." "I don't trust you," she said, not unkindly. "I know. But I miss you." Jade's breath caught. "I miss you too." Bella looked away, then back again, slower this time. "Let's start over, slowly, honestly, no secrets, no plans." "Just two women on a bench," Jade said, trying not to cry. Bella smiled faintly, with a hell of a past. They sat for a long time after that, and when the sun dipped behind the buildings and the city lights flickered on one by one, Jade reached out, slow, cautious, and let her hand brush against Bella's. Bella didn't pull away. The reckoning we didn't see coming. Winter was retreating, but its breath still lingered in the shadows. The days had begun to stretch longer, and in the space between cold mornings and shy afternoons, something fragile and strange was blooming. Not spring, not quite forgiveness, but maybe something like grace. Jade and Bella had agreed to take things slow, but slow turned out to be more difficult than either of them imagined. Because time doesn't move kindly when you're mending something you once broke with your own hands. Time resists. It exposes every crack, every unhealed edge. It asks you again and again, are you sure? Are you ready? Are you brave enough to love again without armor? Jade didn't have all the answers, but she kept showing up. She showed up at the antique shop every Thursday with fresh flowers and coffee, never expecting more than a smile and maybe 5 minutes of Bella's presence. She showed up at town hall meetings, standing quietly in the back as the Rural Justice Fund made its first official land reclamation deals. She showed up at Bella's doorstep one evening during a rainstorm with nothing but a thermos of chamomile tea and a newspaper clipping that praised Bella's leadership in revitalizing the Bentham farmland. And slowly, piece by piece, Bella began opening her door wider, her voice softer, her eyes less guarded. They talked again, not about the past, but about books and music and stray cats and the future they hadn't dared imagine before. But just when the sky started to clear, the storm returned. It happened on a Friday. Jade was at the farm, her boots caked in wet dirt, hauling feed into the pens when her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something in her gut told her to answer. It was Sarah. "There's been an incident," she said quickly. "You need to get to the city now." "What happened?" "Harold Kingston. He was arrested this morning, but—" Jade, he made bail within hours. And before the ink was dry on the court documents, he held a press conference blaming everything, every single thing on Bella. Jade's heart went still. "What?" He said she orchestrated the fraud, that she manipulated access to the trust funds, that the Rural Justice Fund is a front for embezzlement, and he gave them documents, fake but convincing. No, she's clean. Sarah, I've seen every document myself. She's—" "I know, but the media doesn't, and the public's already split." By the time Jade reached Bella's shop, the sidewalks were crawling with reporters. Photographers snapped pictures of the closed door. Microphones waved through the air like desperate hands trying to catch the truth. And Bella was sitting inside, behind the glass in her favorite leather armchair, hands clenched around a cup of tea gone cold. She looked up as Jade walked in, her face pale and unreadable. "He really did it," she said softly. "I didn't think he had it in him, not this." Jade crossed the room in seconds, kneeling in front of her, gripping her hands. "We'll fight this," she said fiercely. "We'll prove it's fake. He's just trying to deflect. He's cornered and desperate." Bella didn't speak. Her eyes were distant, not numb, but ancient, like she had aged 1,000 years in a single hour. "He said I was the architect," she whispered, "that I orchestrated a smear campaign against him for personal revenge, and they're listening. People are listening." Jade stood, pulling out her phone. "I still have the files, the originals. We'll show chain of custody. We'll bring in every tech expert we need. We'll bury this." But Bella didn't stand. She just stared at the rain outside, her voice like broken glass. Do you know what it feels like to realize your name will never belong to you again? That no matter what you build, someone will always see you as an extension of the worst person you ever knew. Jade sat beside her slowly. I don't know that, but I know this, you are not him, and anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve your story. Bella looked at her, eyes shimmering. What if no one listens? Jade reached into her coat pocket and pulled out something she hadn't touched in weeks, the lavender-scented letter. She unfolded it and placed it gently in Bella's lap. You once said I should let you find out from me, if I ever wasn't who I said I was, she said. You gave me a chance to be honest, I blew it, but now it's your turn to believe in something, believe in us. Believe that truth wins, even when it bleeds first. Bella looked down at her own handwriting, slowly running her fingers over the words. Outside, thunder growled. The shop lights flickered, and Jade knew deep in her bones that this was their final crossroad. The press conference happened 2 days later. This time, Bella wasn't alone. Jade stood beside her. The City Hall chamber was packed. Reporters, citizens, activists, even some officials who once shook Harold Kingston's hand now sat tight-lipped in the back row. Bella wore no makeup, no jewelry, just a navy blue coat and a determined expression. I'm here to say something no daughter should ever have to say, she began. My father is a liar. Gasps rippled through the room. I've spent my adult life distancing myself from the empire he built. I never took his money. I never signed a single corporate document under his authority. And today I am here with evidence, proof, of every falsified record, every manipulated transfer, every lawyer he paid to make this look like my doing. She turned, nodding to Jade. Jade stepped up, opening a thick folder and began laying out the facts. The original files, the IP addresses, the timestamps, the forensic audit conducted independently the night before, every item displayed, every accusation dismantled with precision. By the end, there was no sound, just silence. And then applause, first from one woman in the front row, then a ripple, then a storm. Bella didn't cry, but Jade saw her lips tremble just once. Outside the courthouse, the crowd waited. Some held signs now, believe BLLA, daughters aren't their fathers, truth matters. Jade looked at her, you did it. Bella looked back, her voice barely a breath. No, we did. And then, without warning, Bella reached out and took her hand. Not like a promise, not like a performance, but like something holy, something earned. Later that night, they lay beneath the stars on the hood of Jade's old truck, the sheep barn a quiet silhouette in the background. Do you still love me? Jade asked, not daring to look. Bella didn't answer immediately. Then I never stopped. A pause. I just needed to learn how to love you without fear. Jade turned, finally meeting her eyes. And now? Now I think I'm ready. The wind rustled through the trees. The stars didn't speak, but the silence between them did. It said you survived the fire. It said you still have hands to rebuild. It said this love, though scarred, is yours to keep. What we choose to keep after the fire. Spring arrived without fanfare, but it was there, in the small things. In the way the soil smelled darker after rain, in the return of birdsong that had been absent for months, in the thawing of fences once brittle with ice. On Jade's farm, the lambs were growing, and the trees along the western hill bloomed with hesitant green. The house still creaked in the evenings, but it no longer felt haunted. The silence, once aching, now felt sacred. Bella had started spending weekends there again. No grand declarations, no keys exchanged. But she came with soft smiles and books she knew Jade would like and sleeves rolled to her elbows while she scrubbed vegetables in the farmhouse sink. Some days she stayed until Monday morning. Some weeks she didn't leave at all. The firestorm that had followed Harold Kingston's collapse had finally begun to cool. The Department of Justice issued a federal case against him and several of his executives. He was under house arrest, his empire gutted, the board dissolved. The press had moved on to newer scandals, younger villains. But for Bella, the shadow remained, even if smaller now. She had stepped out from behind a surname that once defined her and built something with her own hands. And people noticed. The Rural Justice Fund now managed 7 properties. 3 of them had been handed back to families once forced out. 2 were being transformed into cooperative farming communities. 1 was turned into a wildlife sanctuary. The last was donated to a Native American trust that had been battling Kingston Consolidated in court for over a decade. Bella didn't just undo damage. She wrote new pages in the story, pages no longer stained by her father's name. Still, not everything healed clean. One evening, just as the first stars lit the sky, Jade found Bella sitting on the old porch swing, cradling a glass of wine, her expression unreadable. Jade sat beside her, their shoulders brushing. For a long while, they didn't speak. Then Bella whispered, "He wrote me a letter." Jade turned slightly. "Your father." Bella nodded. "What did it say?" She swirled her wine. "That he was sorry, that he always saw me as weak because I left, that I wasn't ruthless enough to lead the empire. And now, he said, he realized I was the only one who could have saved it if I'd been willing to sell my soul." Jade didn't respond. She waited. Bella exhaled slowly. "I didn't write back, not because I hate him, I just don't owe him anything anymore." Jade reached for her hand. "You never did." They sat like that until the stars thickened above them. The next morning, Bella woke early. She padded barefoot into the kitchen, hair tousled, wearing one of Jade's flannels. The old floorboards groaned under her feet. She stood by the window and looked out at the pastures, mist curling around the fence posts like breath. And in that stillness, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not silence. Not escape. But peace, the kind that doesn't come from running or fighting, but from finally standing in your own truth and knowing that, for once, nothing and no one can take it away. She brewed coffee and left 2 mugs steaming on the table. When Jade joined her a few minutes later, still blinking sleep from her eyes, she smiled and handed her a folded piece of paper. Jade raised an eyebrow. "Another letter." Bella nodded. "But this one isn't for when things get hard, it's for when we decide to begin again." Jade opened it carefully. Inside was a short note, written in Bella's handwriting, clean and unhurried. "You once asked me if I still loved you. I told you I never stopped. Today I want to tell you something more. I don't just love you, Jade, I choose you. Not because of what we've been through, not in spite of it, but because in all the noise, you were the only truth that stayed. I don't want to live beside your life. I want to live inside it." Jade read it 3 times before she could look up. Her throat was tight, her eyes shimmered, but her voice, when it came, was steady. "I don't know how to give you anything less than everything." Bella leaned forward, pressing her forehead to Jade's. "Then let's build everything together." Months passed. The farmhouse changed. Bella's antique desk sat in the sunroom now, a clutter of ledgers and fund proposals and half-finished poems she never let Jade read until they were done. The back garden bloomed with lavender and rosemary. A stray tabby cat adopted them, napping in the hay bales like he'd always belonged. And Jade, she never stopped judging sheep, never stopped running the farm, but she laughed more now, held things more loosely, loved more openly. One evening, while hosting a small gathering for families who had received land back through the Justice Fund, someone raised a glass and asked how Jade and Bella had met. Jade smirked. "She startled me in a haunted house, literally screamed at me." Bella rolled her eyes. "She screamed louder and nearly tackled me into a mirror." Everyone laughed. Later, as the guests drifted home, and the stars blinked into place above them, Bella turned to Jade on the porch swing once again. "Do you ever regret it," she asked softly, "taking him down?" Jade was quiet for a long moment. "I regret not telling you sooner," she said. "But taking him down? No, because from the ashes of that you became everything you were meant to be. And you're not just his daughter anymore, you're the author of your own name." Bella leaned into her. "So are you." They sat until the last lantern flickered out. And when Jade whispered, "Come home," Bella didn't ask where she meant. She just smiled and stayed.